Body mass index, or BMI, is a measure of weight adjusted for height, calculated as weight in kilograms, divided by the square of height in meters. So for example, an 80 kilogram person who is 180 centimeters tall would have a BMI of around 24.6 as per this calculation here. Alrighty guys, a very warm welcome to the video. So today we're talking about BMI and how you can calculate your own BMI. The equation is simply weight in kilograms divided by the height in meters squared, as per that simple calculation at the intro of the video. Now, what exactly is BMI? Well, like we said earlier, it's a measure of weight adjusted for height. It is important to note, however, that BMI was always developed as a population-based screening tool with limited value in individual diagnosis. So what does this mean? Well, it means that from an individual perspective, one's BMI does not tell a full picture of their health. It can be a good indicator of their health, for example, in cases of obesity where there is true obesity with excess fat tissue and therefore negative adverse health consequences or the potential for negative health consequences of that. However, realize that BMI was always designed as a population-based overall weight screening tool on a large scale. And like we said, its individual capacity to diagnose specific health conditions is limited. Now, going off the BMI classification chart in the top right of the page, we see that anything under 18.5 is considered underweight. And I would give more value to the underweight classifications than I probably would for overweight. But then heading into particularly the obesity class 2 and extreme obesity, maybe there's some more weight here, but then we've got to explain it. So 18.5 under or less than is underweight. 18.5 to 24.9 is normal or considered normal healthy weight range. 25 to 29.9 overweight. 30 to 34.9 is classed as obesity, class 1. 35 to 39.9 is obesity class 2, and then anything over 40 is considered extreme obesity. So while the BMI gives you a very general, decent overview of your body weight relative to your height and kind of where you should be sitting from a healthy level or a health perspective, it indeed is not a full picture of excess body fat. The reason why it's useful is because from a population standpoint, it is a good predictor of excess body weight and fat tissue in populations. However, from an individual health perspective or individual patient perspective, realize that BMI does not take into account many important things, which are muscle mass. Number one, we know that muscle weighs more than fat, and therefore if you are someone who's 180 centimeters tall and weighs 90 kilograms, and because of that, you're now considered overweight. However, you could be 10% body fat, have great insulin sensitivity, have perfect cholesterol, blood pressure, and all your biomarkers could be perfect, and you are in absolutely fantastic shape. However, from a BMI perspective, because you're carrying some extra muscle, you're overweight. So we see it kind of breaks down from the individual diagnostic potential in that sense. The next thing it doesn't measure, of course, is bone density. So bone density is a very important marker of health. We know that as bone density decreases and as fracture risk increases, well, indeed, having a femoral neck hip fracture is one of the fastest pathways to health decline, particularly in an elderly individual. I believe the 5-year survival rate of a post-femoral neck hip fracture is somewhere in the realm of, it's less than 50% because of the impact of the decreased mobility and everything else like that. So bone density, very important. BMI does not take that into account. Body fat distribution. So this is also very important. We know that where your body fat is actually distributed plays a significant role in your metabolic health outcomes. So for example, adipose tissue or visceral fat, which is collected around the abdomen and then even the abdominal organs. This is now known as visceral fat. This is one of the worst kinds of fat that you can be carrying in terms of the impact that has on your health. So realize that too. Um, it doesn't take into account biomarkers, which are extremely important and reflective of your health. For example, cholesterol, triglycerides, HbA1c, which is a measure of insulin, or it's a measure of your blood sugar control. So this is a screening tool for diabetes or type 2 diabetes. HbA1c is glycated hemoglobin. Don't have to dive into the science around that too much, but essentially it's a very important health marker or biomarker for blood glucose regulation. So BMI, of course, too simplistic to even dive into the blood values. Hormone balance, for example, thyroid. Are you suffering from hypothyroidism? Testosterone, low testosterone, estrogen deficiency, postmenopausal female, going to carry different body fat percentages and distribution, pre and post. So there's many things which regulate body weight, and hormones are a huge one. BMI doesn't consider that. It also doesn't consider, very importantly, activity level and cardiovascular fitness. Being able to run a mile has been shown to, compared to someone who can't, or someone who takes an extremely long time to do that with poor cardiovascular fitness and development, your physical fitness plays a very large and important role in health outcomes. So we really always need to consider that in a full picture of individual or individualized health assessment. The next thing, of course, is smoking, diet, sleep activity. So, someone can be on a extremely poor diet, very malnourished, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and be in that normal, healthy BMI weight of 18.5 to 24.9. However, we know, of course, this does not indicate that that person is a healthy individual. So this is why, from a population-based level, if you look at a whole country or a whole region in general, BMI will give you an indication as to how overweight, underweight, or normal weight they are in terms of body fat, and generally the health consequences of that for the population. But from an individual perspective, there's a lot of minutia that goes into health outcomes. And I, for example, would have a BMI that will classify as overweight. Doesn't necessarily mean that I am overweight. Someone who goes to the gym, develops some muscle mass, even losing body fat but developing muscle mass, you're going to be considered overweight. So there's many things to consider as a holistic picture of health, but there's the BMI calculation for anyone to assess their own BMI. You can also do this with weight in pounds and height in inches. And I think the equation is just exactly the same. So hopefully that was some interesting information and useful information for you guys. Post any questions below. Obviously, there's more things to consider from a holistic health standpoint. And also, before we go, if you do want to get a true indication of your distribution of body fat, your distribution of muscle mass percentages, etc., a DEXA scan, which sends very low radiation x-rays through the body relative to something like a normal x-ray, is probably the best way in which to assess that. And there are limitations there still. However, from a body fat distribution, bone density, lean body tissue or muscle mass perspective, a DEXA scan is the way to go if you're really serious about getting a accurate picture of your body composition. However, from a generalized health perspective on a cross population with a low cost measurement of body weight, BMI seems like it's the way to go. So hopefully you guys found that interesting. Post any questions, and I'll see you all in the next video.